All right, so welcome everybody. It is Monday night on the seventh week of the January Business of Wine course. And so tonight I want to cover just anything general anybody might have and also give everybody a heads up. I'm traveling Wednesday and I should be able to be on the call. However, I'll send an email if it looks like I'm going to get stuck somewhere or whatever. And we'll just sort of play Wednesday a bit by ear. But I wanted to take everybody through this program. Hey, Carol.
Hi.
And give you an idea of sort of my the state of the wine industry according to Tim, and some background on the work that I do. So any kind of nuts and bolts or house cleaning issues about projects or what's due when or any of that kind of stuff? Nope. All righty. Well then, let me get into it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be I had the honor of being the keynote at the Michigan Wine and Grape Conference, and next week in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and then I'm going to be going over to Michigan State University, and I've been doing work with Michigan State for a good 20 years probably. And so we're going to be launching we're having a conference call with a number of other universities about an intercollegiate wine business contest that we're coming up with. And then I'm going to be doing a presentation for the Kellogg School of Hospitality to about 400 people at MSU. And this is the presentation that I'm going to be giving them. I'd like to preface this because I've had calls with every one of you that are in the class tonight. Some people I never hear a word from. I don't even know why they take the course, frankly. But in every case, with every one of you, I've talked about critical thinking and looking a little bit differently, whether you're looking at launching a wine distribution company, importing company, whether you're trying to find a job or enhance your position or deal with things going on in hospitality and tasting rooms and so forth, or whatever it is. A long time ago, like let's go back to the early 90s when I joined Beringer and had just become a master of wine. I was pretty much acknowledged as one of the gurus of wine and food pairing. But now that's according to Jancis Robinson. She actually had me write the first sections for the early versions of the what's her great book, the Encyclopedia of Wine or whatever. But deep inside, I knew there was something like really amiss in the wine industry. So I'm going to take you through this presentation pretty much a little faster than I would normally do it. But this is the hospitality context. Does anybody know what a poltergeist is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you all know that it's a loud guest. Oh, did you know the word guest came from the word ghost?
Huh.
And the word host comes from the word ghost? Most people don't. And it's my fascination with words and etymology and what we can learn sometimes, and that actually ghost could just be a stranger or a guest at an inn. And then the evolution of the word host became then later the person who receives the guests. So guest is from German, and host is from the Latin, but they both fundamentally mean an unknown being or spirit that then later became known as poltergeists and so forth. we've got a serious problem in the wine industry and our connection with wine consumers, and it's going to be getting worse through generations. I don't know if you'll be able to hear the sound on this, but y'all can recognize Niles here.
Fraser's younger brother.
Yep. And this is a conversation of Niles and Fraser trying to validate whether somebody's a danger to herself, mentally unstable, and of below average intelligence. So I'm going to play it, and we'll see if you get sound or not. Hang on.
Borderline. Does she ever act delusional? Well, she often claims that she's responsible for the success of our show. Gilding? Does she display below average intelligence? She wants a bottle of white Zinfandel. Talk to her. She's a threat to herself. Amazing, even let the woman drive.
Were you able to hear the?
Yeah.
So they're asking, is this any signs of this woman being delusional, showing below average intelligence, being unstable, and it all boils down to she once ordered white Zinfandel. Okay. I don't know of any industry that has such a ridiculous fascination with making consumers feel like idiots. Okay? And what I want you to think about what I'm going to present to you as proof that the French always loved sweet wines. In fact, one of the most popular drinks in France since World War II has fundamentally been white Zinfandel. It was just called a Kier, not white Zinfandel. We make fun of them in tasting rooms. We make fun of them growing up. We actually, and the reason this is going to be in the hospitality school, they teach this at my work at Johnson and Wales universities. There's 6 campuses around the country, at Michigan State University and many other places, because we actually teach and train people who serve wine, who are the front line, the gatekeepers to the consumer in restaurants and in hotels and retail stores and tasting rooms. We actually teach them to be inhospitable. So this is about hospitality, and what I'd like everybody that takes my classes to really think about. Doesn't mean you have to believe it or agree with it or whatever, but think about it. And think about how inhospitable that we've made wine. Now, it turns out that the word poltergeist comes from people who were loud guests. So if you had an inn, or people that, if you rented out a room long ago, if the guests were being loud, they were poltergeists. So long before they were ghosts, they were loud guests. And of course, poltergeist in current meaning is somebody who it's a spirit or a ghost that actually knocks or makes noises or something. Okay, but in literal translation, poltergeist means loud guest. What we're trying to do is really totally newly understand the entire wine market. The wine market is so much bigger than maybe the 20% that everybody seems focused on. If you go into wine education, if you go into hospitality, if you try to become a certified wine educator, wine and spirits education trust or whatever, nobody's looking at the whole market. So does anybody remember from the data given in the class, there was something that we looked at, and what percentage of wine sold in the United States is under $10 a bottle? Anybody know that figure?
80%.
70%. Okay. And that's the whole market. It's not all Opus and Russian River and, blah, blah, blah. There's a much bigger market than we tend to look at. What I'm trying to accomplish through my work is let's embrace and cultivate all wine consumers and understand especially the cost of disenfranchising sweet wine consumers. And when I'm doing this for wine lists, for cruise ships, for hotels, for retail stores, really working to help have a representative sampling of wines that hit everybody's personal passions, price points, and flavor profiles. Something for everyone. Okay. Hey, Greg, how you doing?
Good.
Good.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. And this is my mission, actually, revise wine education and training. So it becomes with understanding why we each have our own personal preferences, and then starting to learn how we're different and how different. Anybody ever notice experts don't agree about alcohol levels or grape varieties or what wine should be like, or new oak or this or that?
Yeah.
Yep. And sometimes, polar disagreement. So there are actual reasons that we're looking at that give us our personal preferences, and we're trying to make this become common knowledge. The other thing is that we need to really, really revise an awful lot of common misconceptions in definitions of history and traditions of wine. And then the last part, which is my own personal favorite playground, is we really got to do something different with wine and food pairing, y'all, and we'll get to that. Okay? Hospitality is a reciprocity between the host and the guest. If you want to sell more wine in your tasting room, if you want to have more business as a retailer, if you want to make more patrons in the restaurant happier, you're actually going to make sure that everybody is covered across every spectrum. And how this looks in a business sense is market segmentation, then targeting people in the different segments in different ways, offering products that are differentiated by price and by story and by whatever it takes, and then positioning in the mind of the customer, wow, they really took care of me. They really took care of the other people in my party, or that I was having over to my house for dinner or whatever. So you'll hear this over and over again, creating a positive, memorable experience for the guests. That's really creating something that they can walk away with that makes them feel smart, makes them feel valuable, and makes them want to come back for more product, bring people back. So it's conveying your brand promise and values while satisfying the business needs that you have. All right, so let's get into a myth. Everybody heard the idea, but as people drink more wine, their palate becomes more mature. They learn to like better wine, which means dry wine. Y'all familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
It's total crap. Your palate roughly doesn't change. There are some significant pharmacological, physiological, traumatic, or brain things that can happen. But from pretty much the time you're 4 years old till very late in life, your palate doesn't change. And interesting, an awful lot of people gravitate more towards sweet wines very late in life, not just dry wines. So even that, there's not even a completely predictable path. All right. So we start from this premise that it's your palate maturing and your palate's not changing. The changes, there are changes, yes, but the changes are actually neurological. They are not physiological. Okay. And if anybody wants to stop or whatever, any questions?
Well, that makes total sense. I mean, you like what you like, right?
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Period. Now, where the neurological piece comes into play, if I take your point, is as you experience better qualities of wine, irrespective of what bucket you're experiencing, whether it's sweet wine, demi-sec or dry wines, certain wines are made better and have an overall balance of flavor that you may personally like because you like that particular type of wine.
Yeah, let me just sum it up. You're right, you're dead on. You like it because you like it. Yep. Now, the changes that do occur, you've heard of an acquired taste.
Yes.
That's a function of neural plasticity. So that's the neurological, you see mommy and daddy having coffee. So, oh, can I try the coffee? No, Timmy, you're already enough of a pain in the ass. We're not going to give you coffee. But grown-ups are doing it. It's something you can aspire to. You want to be like, you know, like an adult. And they finally give you a sip and it's like, oh, it's horrible. But over time you associate, wake up and smell the coffee. The smell is actually very attractive from a very natural standpoint. You learn to put maybe a little cream and sugar, then maybe you change that or you don't. But you acquire a taste when the neurological processing of a sensation takes you from something that you naturally disliked to something that gives you positive reinforcement and aspiration or achievement. And so now you're equating something that you were predisposed to not like with something that you have attained or gained, and that's how you acquire a taste to like something. In the same exact way we dispose of tastes. Oh, sugar's for kids, you know, it makes you act out, it's going to rot your teeth, it's going to make you fat, why don't you eat grown-up food? And so we acquire and we dispose of tastes over time, but it's actually, again, it's a neurological process, not a physiological change.
Hey, Tim, does this apply to Brussels sprouts and broccoli for kids too?
We'll get to that. We will get to that because how we perceive things can be dramatically different. Now, here's what I'm trying to help train professionals at Michigan State, at the WSET, and WSET's actually right now adopted all my wine and food principles in their work. And that's, hi, can I help you find a wine you'll love? And I'm a trained professional, and my job is to use my training and my expertise to find something that you're going to love. And Carol, this needs to be, everybody needs to sign off on this in the tasting room when you hire, right?
I'm taking notes.
And I'll send you guys a copy of this as well. All right, so imagine you go into a shoe store and you've got a budget in mind and so forth, and we're going into a shoe store in a world where even the top experts in the world don't know people have different size feet. Okay, so this is my little fantasy of this. So you go in and there's a master of shoes and they say, hi, can I help you? Welcome to the Shoe Emporium. We have 1,000 different shoes from all over the world, every price. And I'm specially trained in shoes. You can blindfold me and give me a shoe and I can tell you where it's from and who made it and what they stepped in and all this stuff. They say, great. I'm looking for something, you know, smart but casual business, you know, maybe $60 and I like Italian, right? And so the shoe expert says, well, here's this particular shoe. It's only $120. It won the Mondial des Shoes in Paris. It was rated the best shoe of its type in the world by experts like me. You say, okay, great, let's try it on. And you put it on your foot and you go, ow, that doesn't fit, that hurts. You say, obviously your foot's not mature yet. If you knew more about shoes, you could appreciate this shoe and so on. I mean, that would be absolutely ridiculous, but literally it is how we are operating in the wine industry today. All right? I'm going to introduce you to a word called phenotype, and it's completely synonymous with the word phenotype. And it's your phenotype. Somebody asked about broccoli. there are genetic reasons and there are neurological reasons that we like and dislike things. And the neurological is the most changeable one. It's called neuroplasticity, and you've got all these companies like luminosity.com and so on that talk about neuroplasticity. But your phenotype actually establishes what you love, what you hate, what you want to avoid. Okay? So it's from the word phenotype, which is a combination of physiological characteristics or genetic characteristics of an organism and then how they adapt to their environment. And a phenotype's just a wine drinking organism. All right? Now, we teach this to companies. We have little online widgets and so on. They teach this at schools that I work with. It's really having this new conversation, as I said in the very first slide, about why people like, what they like, earning their trust, and then being able to get them a shoe that fits, and then being able to throw onto it that it won this award or that it's this designer or comes from this country and so on and so forth. And this is the part of the selling equation that we totally are missing in the wine business. So anybody here have what's called the cilantro gene? And what I mean is when you have cilantro, it is horrible.
That soap taste?
Yep. So you've heard of it. And basically it's a genetic variant. It's a gene or a SNP called OR6A2. And you can, when you get your 23andMe $200 results, they can even tell you, you've got this. And basically what happens is this variant in genetics causes about 4% of Americans to get this horrible, disgusting, soapy taste from a tiny, tiny speck of cilantro in their food.
Yep.
I had somebody at a conference I was doing in Linfield College over in McMinnville, Oregon, and he said, "Do you know what hell is? Hell is having this SNP and this disgusting reaction to even just the smell of cilantro." And he was stuck behind a cilantro truck in Mexico on this windy road and that they couldn't get out from behind, and is blowing cilantro
That's hilarious.
in 100-degree temperature and whatever. If you don't have the SNP, you may think, oh, well, I didn't like cilantro. You could learn to like it too. If you've got this variant, you cannot learn to like cilantro. It is disgusting. And it's not a matter of whether you're exposed to it more or your palate becomes more sophisticated, because Julia Child had it. And if she was ever asked, is there anything you can't eat? Cilantro, it's disgusting. How does anybody eat that? I pick it out and I throw it on the floor. I send the food back and have them remake it. So we really, and there's thousands of these receptors, but these variations are why Dan Berger argues hating the wines that Robert Parker loves. And I've got a picture of Dan Berger's tongue back when we used to count taste buds and we were in really early stages of these. So what we really need to get is there are wild genetic variations from one person to the next, and your phenotype, your preferences are your sensory sensitivity, and there's no good or bad, better or whatever. Have you heard that women are better tasters?
I have heard that.
But better for whom? And even that's a gross generalization. But your sensory sensitivity dictates what you perceive and the range that you receive. Yeah, Michael.
I probably heard it from a woman.
Yeah, no, it's in all the books. It's actually, you hear it over and over again, and no one ever thinks, well, better in what way? If I've got less taste buds, might I like wine that the person with more taste buds hates?
Yeah.
It's like saying a size 8 is the best size foot. And so best how? If I've got a size 11 foot, why is a size 8 better? So, and we'll get into this a little bit more. So this is the anatomical part of it. And as we'll show in a second, some people have 500 taste buds and are masters of wine. Other people have 11,000 or more. And it's actually even harder to become a master of wine. But we'll get into that. So the physiological part is how many receptors, what kind of receptors. Some people are colorblind. You can't teach them to see a color they don't have a receptor to see. You can't teach somebody to hear a frequency of harmonics or a frequency in audio. You can't teach them to hear something they can't hear. Then the other things that go in are your life experiences, your learning, your observation, your culture, and your environment. I want to give you all a warning. As you go through more and more wine training, you become less natural, you become more and more filled with BS, and you become further removed from how we're going to really create millennials to be, and even newer generations to be wine drinkers, because we're filling our heads up with a lot of BS. Okay? So you learn that you've got to pair this, you learn to use these words, you learn this is good wine, that's bad wine, etc., etc. I'll give you a way to help moderate that a little bit, I hope. We break the world down into 4 basic categories of sensitivity. We've got a little app that we're not working on right now. We've got a big overhaul of this coming up. Anybody on this call love salt? Love salt? Okay. Anybody love salt and you can't drink black coffee? Love salt, cannot drink black coffee? None of you? Those of you who love salt, let me use you, Kelly. Do you find artificial sweetener tastes chemical and horrible?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Did you guys know that the person who reaches for the salt shaker without even tasting their food, that's the #1 sign they have the most taste buds?
I carry it with me.
There you go. And how do you take your coffee, Kelly?
I usually add some kind of sugar and cream.
Oh, so you do. Okay, so you don't drink it black.
I'm starting to. I'm not sure.
Okay, so you're learning to like it. Do you find Starbucks tastes burnt to you?
Yes, it can be a little bitter.
Well, I'm talking it actually tastes burnt, not a little bitter, but actually burnt.
Sometimes.
Huh. I'll have to try that tomorrow.
Try it tomorrow and find out. The sum of this is Kelly would be actually very likely, because of his sensitivity levels across all of these questions. Do you have to cut tags out of your clothes, or do you buy clothes without tags?
Oh, yeah.
That's consistent with all of those traits. And and it's also, though, why you love people. You are empathetic to a flaw because you love people, and you want. Do you have any rescue pets?
As a matter of fact.
No, and this, yeah, these are all consistent.
I hate being predictable.
So he's a male that actually lives in the hypersensitivity level of most females. And it's very common, by the way. So what we do is we break the world down into tolerant people, have the least taste buds. They're very high business acumen. They're bottom line oriented. They run businesses, and they tend to be highly financially successful. My good friend Jean-Michel Valette, who's Master of Wine. He was concurrently chairman of the board concurrently of Pete's Coffee, Boston Brewing, Sleep Number Beds, Scharfenberger Chocolates, and Robert Mondavi Winery.
Wow.
Backer.
Yeah, but he's decisive. He's bottom line oriented. Sensitive phenotypes are the middle range, and they tend to be very indecisive, but they love adventure, they love risk, they love trying new things. So they're in the median sensitivity group, and they're also fantastic at helping resolve conflict. So they make great managers, and they love a whole spectrum of wines. The tolerant love high alcohol, which actually tastes sweet to them. They love lots of bitterness, astringency. It doesn't register. And so that's the tolerant. The sensitive love the widest spectrum of wines. Hypersensitive are really sensitive to bitterness. So you're probably towards this edge, Michael.
Yeah.
Carol, I'm going to guess you're on the hypersensitive. Kelly's very definitely there. He shows all the traits. And then the final group we identify is the sweet phenotype. All you need to do to qualify for that is you want sweet wine, but our research shows that it's the white Zin and Moscato drinkers that have by far the most taste buds of any consumers out there. Did you get that? White Zin and Moscato drinkers have the highest taste sensitivity. So much so that the alcohol burns to the point it hurts. They can't stand all the bitterness and so forth. Tolerance about 15% of the total available market. Sensitives about 35%. The other 50% equally split between hypersensitive and sweet. But the true size of the sweet phenotype segment in the United States is probably closer to 40%, because the hypersensitive phenotypes very often are the ones who talk dry, but then drink sweet wines, whether it's Meiomi or Rombauer or whatever, okay?
So if you don't have a sweet wine and someone says they prefer something sweet, you offer them a fruit bomb with the least amount of tannin?
No, put some raspberry syrup. Carol, you've got sweet wines, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pride Vineyards, I just went and did a full half-day workshop up at Pride Vineyards in Napa, and they're putting Monin raspberry syrup in their tasting room now. So when they get sweet phenotypes, they can say, oh, try our Viognier, and then let me put some raspberry syrup in. And they're selling the snot out of Viognier to people who would never buy a bottle of their wine in their life, and sending them away with a story. And they're making a second sell because they're selling the raspberry syrup.
I'll be damned.
I know it. How about that? And by the way, this is a practice that goes back centuries in Italy and France and Germany. We'll get into that also. This is not something radical. This is actually founded in traditions of wine. And yeah.
That's good to know, because it seems like such a bastardization of, how dare you add to wine, but it's been happening.
Yep, we'll get to that in a second.
So it's Viognier and raspberry syrup?
What's that?
Viognier and raspberry syrup?
No, it was actually whatever the local sweet syrup or liqueur was of a region in France, and whatever shitty wine they had.
Well, I'm talking about Pride specifically.
Oh, Pride is offered. They'll put you can try the raspberry syrup in their $90 Merlot or red blend also.
Wow.
So it's not. It's just a fruit syrup. It's not cassis or something like that.
Well, cassis is a fruit.
Well, it's an alcoholic beverage, though, right?
Well, raspberry can be made into an alcoholic beverage, but basically with the sweet phenotype, you want to keep alcohol low. So using the syrup. So in France, they would use either cassis syrup or creme de cassis, which is the liqueur.
Yeah. Okay.
In a Bellini, it would be pear or peach juice, right? What's in Italy? Yeah. So this will tell you about what I just explained about each of the phenotypes. You can look that back over, and Wednesday we can you can read all this kind of stuff, and we can have some discussion about it further as well. So sweet phenotypes. You know the term dessert wine? Do you have that on any of your wines, Carol?
Yes.
Take it off.
Oh.
It should come off every modern wine. Sauternes in France, Port, all these wines were never dessert wines.
Interesting.
And I'll show you evidence of that in just a minute. The term dessert wine was created by the US feds after Prohibition to close a tax loophole. And now we're putting on one of the most guilt-ridden words, one of the most highly avoidable parts of a meal, on something that actually used to be served with the meal in France or before the meal, like port in France, which we'll get to.
You have to pay more taxes on the dessert wines.
Well, they've redone that also. The laws have changed, and you can find the tax code real easily on the TTB.
Yeah.
But what's happened is people think that dessert wine meant it was because it was sweet. And that's not why the word was invented. So it's a longer story that I can't get too much into. But after Prohibition, the way to deliver the most beverage alcohol for the cheapest price and the lowest tax was to dump high proof spirit into grape juice or partially fermented grape juice and call it fortified wine. And so the Fed said anything over 14%, which used to be about the natural limit wine could reach, anything over 14% was taxed, even up till 5 years ago or 10 years ago in Alabama. If you had a 14.5% alcohol Chardonnay or Cabernet, it was being taxed as dessert wine.
It's moved up to 16 now, hasn't it?
Actually up to 18.
Oh, wow.
All right. This is an illusion of a spinning lady. It's not a spinning lady. Your brain tells you it is because it recognizes certain things. Who sees her going clockwise? Anyone?
I do.
If I have 100 people in a room, about 60% see her going clockwise, 40% see her going counterclockwise. About half the class or half the room will start to say, oh, she changed directions, and the other half will never see that. She's not spinning.
Now she changed.
No, you changed.
Wow. Still
So
clockwise.
Here's a huge thing I really want you guys to get.
No, wait a minute.
The sensory experience is completely personal. She's not spinning. She's doing the same thing over and over again. It appears, by the way they've set up the pixels and stuff, you think she's spinning. If the right-hand side of your brain is processing the information, she appears to go clockwise. If the left-hand side of your brain is processing the information, she appears to go counterclockwise. If she changes, it's because your brain changed, not because anything different happened on the screen.
All right, I got it.
When wine in a tasting room, when you're setting up this really great ambiance and when you're making a great meal, you want the food to look exceptional. These are things that are environmentally influencing how certain sensations are going to be processed. She never changes anything. The only thing that happens is happening in your brain. All right? And this is what we're doing to consumers with the crap that we're learning. We're taught, we've got, the bananas and the floral and the spicy with the, We're just scaring the crap out of people. Some people love it, but this is the new conversation. Have a conversation with somebody and ask them, how do you like to talk about wine? What are your personal favorites? This is in my longer version of this. This is actually, then my next slide is a study that was done in France of 54 experts trained in wine in Bordeaux in France. They were asked to create a white wine lexicon and a red wine lexicon, words that describe white wines and red wines. Put all the words together into a master descriptive lexicon and said, here's a white wine. What does it smell like? And they tasted and they smelled it, and it was bananas and apples and coral and lychee. They were then given a red wine. Taste that. What does it smell like? They were focusing on aroma. Oh, it's woody and cassis and cherry and spicy. And it was the same exact wine. It was the white wine and then the white wine colored red and with tannin and bitterness added. And not one of the experts said this is the same wine by the smell. And it was identically the same wine by the smell.
Wow.
And when the same researcher does this with consumers, 25% of people with no training go, this is the same wine. It smells the same. But the more you become trained, the more that your brain is doing this. And then when and we think this is what's necessary to describe wine, but it really often works against us when we're speaking to consumers. So here's what I'm up to, you guys. I was at a dinner in 2011, just after publishing a 54-page report, and I'm going to send it to you, of data showing all this research on taste buds and sensitivities and correlations to wine preferences. Somebody came up to me, an old friend of mine. He's from Memphis, Tennessee. His name's Harvey Poser. He says, I read that report you wrote, Tim, and it changed my life. And I said, okay, is that good or bad? He said, I've been in this business a long time, and I think I'm one of those sweet vino types you talk about. Harvey Poser, for 35 years, was one of the senior executives at the California Wine Institute and was later hired by Robert Mondavi as Senior Vice President of Communications. And it could be well argued that Harvey Poser made the Napa Valley. Not only made Mondavi what it is, but his mission was to elevate the Napa Valley and to have Robert at the epicenter of that. He's in the wine business for 45 years and he cannot drink a dry wine. He said, when Bob hired me, I told him, Bob, I can't stand the shit you make. It tastes like crap.
How do you spell the guy's last name?
P-O-S-E-R-T.
Again?
P as in Paul.
Yep.
O-S-E-R-T. And it's Harvey Sr. His son's a great, great friend of mine. And he's actually the reason my book got written, called Why You Like the Wines You Like. This is a book, literally, it's in my bathroom right now. I've been reading this book since I was 15 years old, so since 1967. And here's what they say about matching wine and food. When you bring out the Lafite, the Romanée, the Hermitage, all these great red wines, if the guest prefers, serve them white wine and sweet white wine. And so Harvey is the one who said, so what you're saying, Tim, is we should match the wine to the diner, not the dinner. Carol, you start doing this, and I'll give you some demonstrations to do. You will be amazed at how people are going, this is the best visit I've ever had. When you sell them a bottle of your you name it to have with whatever they're having the next night, and it will be delicious. It's only in our head that that there's all these matches. And if you look back, this is France, 1938, this book, with soup, Madeira, Marsala, port, and sherry are served before the meal, not with dessert. When you're serving the fish, Chateau Yquem,
Yep.
Chateau Carbonneau, Barsac were all sweet wines.
Sauternes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If you look back in history, red wine was used as mouthwash for the taste of really, really strong game and beef. It was really strong back then. We wouldn't even eat it today. And here's even more interesting. See what it's over here with the sweet course? White Rhone wines were almost all sweet if they were of any quality. Montrachet, the epitome of great Chardonnay, was really, really sweet. And it was grouped in with Muscat and with Rhine wines.
Interesting.
We tell people to do these things, and I want you to go try wine and food things completely newly and differently. 90% of people who have asparagus in any wine absolutely have no problem with it. 90%. But if you read the wine and food books, if you're taking your Master Somm test examination, asparagus and wine don't go together. BS. Do you know what really sucks is cherries in wine. Did anybody have your grape and your red wine with you tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Take a sip of your wine, Carol. You're going to do this in your tasting room every day now.
Cheers.
Cheers. Eat the grape. Wine's made from grapes, so you should, have the grapes in the sauce or garnish, the duck with the cherries. Yummy grape?
No.
No? Well, taste the wine again. Should.
Oh,
It sucks, doesn't it?
yes.
It's called sensory adaptation. You know what happens when you brush your teeth and drink orange juice and you stop doing it. When we start matching and pairing wine and food, we start doing things that really suck. Now, do you have your salt and your lemon?
I do.
Okay. On the back of your hand, just a little bit of lemon and a little pinch of salt.
Right. Like when I was a teenager?
Yes, ma'am. Or like last week in Margaritaville.
Right. Lick the salt and then drink the wine.
Now, take a sip. Now, and here's the protocol for the rest of your life. Take a sip of the wine. And some of it should be wearing off. Now imagine what's going to happen. Lick your hand and try the wine again.
Good again.
Dill pickle is better with Pinot Noir than cherries. Salmon and Pinot Noir with no salt and lemon on it sucks. The fat of a steak makes the wine more bitter and more sour until you put salt on it, or in Tuscany, as Michael will verify, they serve it with heavily salted bistecca alla fiorentina served with lemon. And in Bordeaux, in Alsace, in Burgundy, in Germany, in Spain, the cuisines have evolved to be much more salt and acid dominant to balance out sweet and umami tastes. Who here has ever tried Cabernet and oysters? How was it?
It was so long ago, I don't remember. I mean, it was fine. I had red wine with oysters is kind of what it was. It was good.
The people who actually, the phenotypes, especially the tolerant and sensitive phenotypes, rarely ever have a problem with intense oaky Cabernet and oysters. And we've created this whole fear around doing the wrong thing based on absolutely false premises. So when you guys and everybody, and next time any of you, and I'm dead serious about this, did anybody read the article I sent out?
Yeah.
Okay, this is what my, and I've got a bigger island now. So take a little bit of Riesling, put it in a pan, and salt, and put some lemon juice, and poach some delicate sole in it, or halibut or shrimp or something, and try it with a big ass red wine. The wine does not overpower the fish. The fish does not clash with the wine. It's freaking delicious. And you've been told not to do it and to tell people not to do it. We tell servers not to do it. We make wine and food pairing. But if somebody's just bought do you make a Petite Sirah, Carol? What's your big red?
Oh, does that count?
What's that?
Tempranillo, does that count?
Oh, yeah, Tempranillo, absolutely. Send people, do the salt and lemon trick with it. And actually, when you're doing events, do shrimp poached in white wine, salt and lemon, and then have it with Tempranillo, have it with your Moscato, have it with your Albarino and whatever. It's freaking delicious with all of them.
Mm.
We have just made a mess out of this. So over and over again and all around the world, this is what I do. And somebody says, well, oh, the fat of the steak and the proteins, total lie. Doesn't happen.
Right.
Try a really, really great piece of choice or prime fatty meat, no salt, no seasoning, and try it with red wine. It makes it more bitter. It doesn't soften it. It's only the salt you're putting on it that does it. And then, of course, I introduced the word umami into our language. I am the Swami of umami. And so we've got all sorts of amino acids and nucleotides and so on that we do other sensory experiments around. But we've really, really just made a mess of this whole wine and food pairing. So salt and sourness in the food suppress bitterness and astringency and acidity. Sweetness in the food and umami in the food make it delicious, but make the wine inherently bitter and unpleasant. So when you've got even a really rich sauce that's reduced and you've got mushrooms in it and maybe even Parmesan cheese is really rich in umami, if there's not enough salt in it, it's going to be brush your teeth, drink orange juice. So there's this whole new way, and this is a 4-hour workshop that I conducted with all the chefs at Mondavi a couple weeks ago. This is what I teach and what I'm having installed in learning in culinary schools around the world. Anybody see the recent movie about Jeremiah Tower on CNN, the great chef who literally is credited with inventing California cuisine? He's on our board of advisors because he does that. He changed the way he cooks based on all this. And we have hundreds of chefs around the world that are part of this, including chefs in 3-star Michelin restaurants in France that agree with this.
So Tim, if you're a waiter in a restaurant and someone orders a steak and wants you to suggest a wine, would you ask them, well, how do you season your steak first?
Nope. I would know how my steaks are, but I would now have a conversation with you, sir. What kind of wines are you really passionate about?
Mm.
Okay. So just answer the question. Michael, what wines are you passionate about?
I like tannic wines.
Tannic wines, you like, well, and you're passionate about Italian reds, right?
I like Tempranillo a lot. I like Garnacha.
Awesome. Do you now, how much risk do you want to take tonight? Do you want to stay with stuff you know, or do you want to go off into an exploration with me?
No, I want to explore.
Okay, fantastic. I've got this Oguzguzu from Greece that we put on the list because no one can pronounce it. No one would ever sell it except for the people who love these intense reds with a lot of character, the Tempranillos, the Riojas, the Italian Piedmont, etc. Let me get you a bottle of that. I suggest that we put sauce on the side And I'm also going to serve some lemon like is traditional in Northern Italy, if that's all okay with you. But our chef does flavor balancing, and your steak's going to be absolutely dynamite.
I trust you.
Thank you. That is the word we're looking for. That's the word you want, Carol, from your customers. Did they try and send in secret shoppers? Do you know about secret shoppers? Yeah.
Heard. You guys are all invited.
Yeah, those you hire somebody to go in and ask for Moscato and whatever and see how they're treated. All right.
I'll come through and do that for you, Carol.
All right.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about Wine Direct anyway.
There you go.
Okay.
This all goes so far beyond initially this was research in wine and food and why experts argue. My research colleague is a pediatrician, retired. She's a board certified pediatrician and sensory scientist at Cornell. She's been researching the same thing about behavior and attitudes with children for longer than I have. And we are learning the most amazing things about better parenting and how to understand behaviors and kids who love ketchup on everything or dumping tons of salt onto their food. But if you look at a recipe for cèpes à la bordelaise, if you go back and look at the classic recipes, lots of umami in mushrooms, and you saute the mushrooms, you add the demi-glace, it's sauce that's even more intense umami. The very last thing you do is adjust the salt and squeeze in lemon juice. You'll find that this everywhere in Burgundy, they don't use lemon juice because they don't grow lemon trees. They use unripe grape juice, or they use acid wine reductions to do the acidity. So it's the sweetness and the umami, though, that's going to amplify the bitterness. And wine's best friend, delicate. Michael, you've got a great fish market, or right? And you go,
Yeah.
well, you get your own fish. Get your next fabulous mangrove snapper or flounder or whatever delicate ass fish you get. Make it a la Meunière, all right, with the sauteed with the flour and then with the lemon juice and the parsley at the end. Try it with a big ass Nebbiolo or Tempranillo. It will blow your mind.
Okay.
Because you've been taught something different than what reality is.
Well, today I had a leftover steak from yesterday with a white wine.
Yeah.
It was fine.
It's fine. But, and my mother-in-law is a PhD in economics.
Yeah.
She is a millionaire. She was recruited. Anybody ever watched Fast softball pitchers? It's incredible. She was actually recruited by a professional team back in the 50s. And she did semi-pro golf all around the country. She's played St. Andrews. And she loves Moscato and White Zinfandel. You don't market to her, she'll have an iced tea and just screw you. When she goes into a restaurant, if she's not with me, even today, she still won't order wine because of the inhospitality that we've created in this industry. So it's about this new conversation, and it's about asking questions and finding out about what people are passionate about. And then if Michael wants the big ass red wine and the big steak and all that, and somebody else at the table is kind of looking like, they're not touching their wine, it could be, would you like a glass of something else, even something sweet? That's the number one sign of having more taste buds. How can I get you a glass of something you'll love? They'll talk about you forever. So much more than another blasé, this wine goes with this food because cherries, and the wine smells like cherries, so duck's not as big as a cow, and the Pinot Noir is not as big as a Cabernet. So they go together, see? And it's all just a bunch of metaphorical BS. The history's not true, the cultural associations and traditions aren't true, and the pseudoscience of why we explain and rationalize wine and food matches is all just a bunch of.
It's interesting about the fish, because one of the first things that turned me onto that idea was in a tapas bar where they had mussels and a very, very light briny broth
Briny and with acid and with lemon
and
juice.
lemon, and we had Toro.
Yeah,
And it was dynamite.
right. And they don't do wine and food pairing. So that's it. So anyways, we can talk about this more Wednesday, and I'm going to send you this slide deck and also a research paper. That's I may give you a link to the research paper that goes through some of the data and whatever. But I really, really would like every one of you, whether you're looking to enhance your job, find a new job, start a business, import wines, make wines, do something different in your tasting room and your hospitality, you're not going to find it in the WSET and the CSW and whatever. It's the same old crap. And everybody thinks that that's a new story or a new way of doing. It's not new. It's all, and it doesn't mean don't pay attention to it. And it doesn't mean that it's not what a lot of consumers might want. You never know until you ask. And so get that other training, use it for the people who want it, but don't think that everybody is looking for what we're peddling. That's a very small percentage of the total market.
Hey Tim, I have another genetic angle for you. I love all this stuff that I've seen, but the other genetics sometimes are what mom and dad teach their kids.
No, so that's not, if it's teaching, it's neurological.
True.
So the memories, the family, the culture, those kind of things, if it's observed, if it's learned, then it's not genetic.
Right. I'm kind of alluding to 20 years of having my daughter, for example, and son at my table, and the wines that I have served. And it's kind of, in my perspective, it's an incremental awareness of wine that I was always glad to see them learn.
Oh, absolutely.
But what you would like to hear is my daughter had 20 years of me serving this particular wine with this particular food at my table, and she learned it and she loved it. But now when she entertains, bless her heart, when she's out on the patio, she learned that the most popular wines that she could serve were these big glass carafes of white sangria and red sangria.
Just like it.
People went to it and loved
because
it.
we're out of time, I've just got to cut it short, Greg.
Yeah.
Do you get that that's environmental, that that's not genetic?
True.
Okay, that's the point. It's learning, it's observation, it's life experiences, it's culture, it's environment. And so if you have the cilantro gene and you grow up in an area of Mexico that you suffer your entire life.
Right.
Okay, it's genetic. There are 3 alcohol SNP variations. No SNP, alcohol tastes sweet. 1 SNP, it burns, it warms, it's tolerable, and you can even learn to like Scotch. 2 SNPs, it's this horrible, disgusting, and even over 12 or 13% alcohol is unbearably unpleasant genetically. And it doesn't matter what's going on with the family or the culture. And it's actually my research colleague who speaks 4 languages impeccably, who is trained in medical school in Paris, who is amazing, and she loves Moscato and White Zin. She cannot stand dry wine, nor could Harvey Posert. So just, that's what there is today. My book, there was a question, the book's called, there's a link to the book at the bottom of all my emails. So
right.
It's on Amazon if anybody's interested.
Very interested. This was a great session.
Great.
Awesome. Just
awesome. All right. Well, look, everybody work on your projects. I think everyone that's been showing up to these classes, I know you guys are working hard, and thanks for your participation. This has been one of the most fun groups that I've ever had, really, because the familiar faces and you know, just having you all here. So I'll get this out to you, and we'll continue the conversation hopefully on Wednesday.
All right.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, everybody. Thanks.
Tim.
Bye.
Bye.
So long.